We are ready to start drawing our anchor bolt plan. The first thing I would suggest is that you pull the drawing up where it's on one of your screens, and then you have your AutoCAD open on another screen so you can see both at the same time. The other thing is you will need your book because we have to look at the chart on page 139 in your book to get some of our information. Again, remember, you're not going to be told exactly what to do. You're going to be given pieces of information that you have to put together to come up with a plan and get the drawing completed. So the first thing we notice is we have grids running vertically that are numbered 1, 2, and 3, and we have grids running horizontally that are labeled A, B, and C. We have a concrete slab that doesn't really tell us what that dimension is, so we're going to have to figure that out. If I look at the notes at the bottom, it says outside edge of column to outside edge of slab is 4 inches. Okay, so that's good, but I need to know what the column size is. It goes on to say PEMB to be 30 feet wide by 60 feet long. Then I see a note that says see chart on page 139 of the textbook, and we are going to use 20 PSE/LL. So if I go to that chart and I look on the left, I'll see 20 PSE/LL, and on the right I'll see 30 PSE/LL. Then I will see width and height, B, C, and E for each one of those. We said we're using the 20 PSE, so if I go down that side of the chart until I find 30 PSE, then that's going to give me the information. If I look to see what B is where the top of the rafter hits the column, and that's at 14 feet. C is my actual column width, which is 8 inches, and E is the height of the rafter itself, which is 14 inches. So we will use that at another time. So I'm going to go into model space. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to now go to my column layer. And you notice all of the layers begin with S. That's because we're doing structural drawings. If we were doing architectural drawings, they should begin with A. So I'm going to make my column layer my current layer. And I can see from the drawing here that the columns are rectilinear. So I'm just going to start with my rectangle, and I'm going to pick a point. Doesn't really matter where I start. And I know that column is 8 by 8. So I'm going to do at 8 inches, comma, 8 inches. Again, AutoCAD thinks in inches, so you don't have to put inches, but because I switch between Revit and AutoCAD, I always put my feet in inches. And then if I hit enter, you see I have a nice little column there. Now it says, if I go back, it says the outside edge of my column to the outside edge of the slab is 4 inches. So now I know where the edge of that column is. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line going each direction. And I'm going to offset that 4 inches. And that's going to give me my slab dimension. And then I delete those lines and I use my fillet with a 0 radius and connect the two. So I know my slab is 30 by 60. So I'm going to do offset of 60 feet, and I'm going to offset this line. And then I'm going to offset this line 30 feet. And then I'm going to connect those to create my slab. Now I can use my mirror command and go from the midpoint and mirror that. I can also mirror in the other direction. And then just for simplicity's sake, because I'm going to have a grid line here anyway, I'm going to go to the middle and I want to pull that down a little bit past and a little bit up, and we'll come back and make that adjustment. Before I go any further, there's a couple of things I need to do. I do not have a layer for my slab, so I want to create that. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it S-slab. And again, I want it to be pretty bold, so I'm going to leave it green and click down, and we're ready to do that. But I need to go in and change this to the correct layer. So now I should have those on the correct layer. My columns should be on the correct layer. This I need to change to my grid line layer. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down just a little bit. Now I'm going to copy these two columns from the center point to the midpoint. So now I have my top columns and my bottom columns. I'm basically going to do the same thing over this direction. I'm going to pick the midpoint. I'm going to come out about the same distance past and same distance this way. I can use my match command to match those lines. And now I'm ready to copy these columns from their midpoint to the midpoint. So now I have all 6 columns set and placed. So now I need to make sure I get my grid lines in the right place and in the right numbering order. So I'm going to zoom in up here on these. I'm going to go ahead and copy my grid line. And I just need to pick a common point on each one of them so that it goes in the right place. I'm going to do the same thing horizontally. And I'm picking the bottom right corner for mine. And now we have our grids. So now we need to put the bubbles on those. So I'm going to take this first one, and you can see it has an insertion point. And that insertion point is right here where the crosshair is. So I'm going to move that to there. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, but first I need to move these over because I got a little too close. So now I'm going to move the grid bubble, and I don't need to move the insertion point note and the actual crosshair. So I'm going to pick that same point and I'm going to place it right there. Now I can just copy these to the ends of my grid lines. Then I should be able to go in and just change these numbers and change that one to 2 and change this one to 3 and change this one to B and change this one to C. So now I have all of this set up. I'm going to go ahead. I don't need to delete this because if you notice, it's on a no plot layer. If we go into the layers and we look at the no plot layer, you'll see it's set to not print. For now, I'm just going to kind of move these out of my way. The next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and put some dimensions on here. I'm going to change my layer to my dimensions layer. You notice you have a dims and a dims 2. We'll come back to the dims 2 in a minute, but right now I want to make the dims 1 my current dimension. So if I go to my annotate and I go to linear, first thing I want to do is I want to pick this outside corner and I want to go to the midpoint. And I want to make that 8 inches. I'm going to come back and probably move that dimension because I don't want it in the middle of this, but for now I'm just going to use continue and I'm going to go to the midpoints and then to the end point. Then I need to do an overall dimension. So I'm going to pick from there to there and place that dimension right about there. Now again, I can click on this dimension, click on the blue node, and I can do move with dimension line. And so I'm just going to pull that out to the side. Now my other one kind of goes up and out. Again, just for consistency purposes, I want to move this to where it does the same as the other side. So it looks very consistent. Now you'll notice that my 30 feet is on my grid line. So I'm going to move that over to where we can read it. In looking at this, I'm thinking, everything looks a little bit too big. And then I remember I should have set my annotation scale to 1/4 inch. So I'm going to change this at this point to 1/4 inch. Now you'll see my dimensions didn't change, but my grid bubbles did, which is good. So if we ever get in this situation, you should be able to just select all of these, right click and go to your properties. And then you'll see right down here you have Annotation Scale. If we click on that and we click in this little box over here, you'll see right now it's showing 1/8 inch scale. So I want to add my 1/4 inch scale. And then I want to delete my 1/8 inch scale. This way AutoCAD does not get confused. And now you see my numbers changed. So for one thing, this is now way too far out here. So I want to pull that in a little closer. And the same over here, I want to pull it in a little closer to where they pretty well match. Now I'm going to do the same thing in the other direction. Again, I'm going to pick here to my midpoint, and I'm going to bring it out a certain distance, and then I'm going to do continue, and I'm going to go to the midpoint there, and I'm going to go to the midpoint there, and then I'm going to go to the end point. And again, my dimensions really didn't do what I wanted them to do, so if I do that and go to move dimension, I can pull this out. And if it still doesn't go where I want it to, I can leave it like that to move this one to match the other one. So I'm going to pull it, take my ortho off. Now I need to do my overall dimension in that direction. Again, my 60 feet dimension is on my grid line, so I need to move that so that it's easily readable. The next thing we need to do is we need to add our section mark. To do this, we're going to need to create a layer to put that section mark on. We want to be able to control everything on our drawings, so everything needs to be on independent layers. So I'm going to go to my layer manager, and I'm going to create a new layer called S-section mark, and I'm going to leave it as a magenta color, and it will be continuous. We also have an enlarged detail symbol that we need to make. Part of that is hidden line, part of it is continuous line, so we need to actually create 2 layers for that. Again, in my layer manager, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it S-detail RECT for rectangle. And again, I want to leave it magenta, but that one I want to change to a hidden line type. Then I'm going to create the other part, and I'm going to call it S-detail mark. And again, I'm going to leave it magenta, but I want to make sure that it's a continuous line type. And then I'm going to make my section mark my current layer. I don't want to draw the section mark myself, but if I go to my View tab, and I go to the right where I see Sheet Set Manager, and to the right of that on the bottom is something called Design Center. If we go into Design Center, your tree may not look just like mine, but you will open yours to look like mine. So you'll first go under your C drive and go down to Program Files, then go down to Autodesk, then go down to AutoCAD 2020, and then go down to Sample, and then EN-US. And then you will see Design Center that has some items under it, and Dynamic Blocks that have some items under it. We're going to go to Annotation Imperial under Dynamic Blocks. And if we hit the plus sign, it will show us some things, and we can click Blocks. And all the blocks that are associated with that will show up. The one we want to use is the Call Out Bubble Imperial. If you click on it and just drag it into your drawing, it will be placed in your drawing. We need another one for our detail mark, but I don't see one in here. So we will do something different with that. So we are going to take our section mark and we're going to copy it. And then we are going to explode it. When we explode it, you see we have attributes that are tied to it, and we have the outline of the arrow that we want to remove. Then we are going to turn this back into a block by going to our Insert tab and create a block, create block. And when that comes up, we're going to give it the name of Detail Mark. We want to pick a base point. We'll pick the midpoint, and then we need to select the objects and hit enter and say OK. Now we want to make sure we put that on the correct layer, so we're going to select it and change our layer to our detail mark. Now we are ready to start putting these onto our drawings. So for the section mark, we want to put it over underneath the B grid line and fairly close to the column, because it's actually cutting through that column and base plate area. So the first thing we have to do is rotate the detail. If I just rotate it with my normal rotate command, that is going to turn my text sideways, and that is not what we want. With this particular block, you can just grab that end and rotate it around. Now we are going to add the line to it using my line command, and I'm going to bring it out to about the same distance as my grid line, and I want that to be on the same layer as this, so I'm just using my match tool. So now we have that. Right now we don't know the detail number and such, so I'm going to leave that as it is. We'll change that later. A lot of times I like to go in and make this say question mark and question mark, so that I remember I need to go and put in the correct information. The next thing is we're going to do an enlarged base plate detail. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my detail mark layer and the rectangle one. So I'm going to go to rectangle, and I'm going to place this rectangle pretty well centered on my column. If you want to be exact, you can draw a line in both, and you can do move, pick the midpoint, and come to that center point and have it on there exactly. But again, just eyeballing it is fine also. So now we need to add the bubble to that, and we need to add a line off of that. And then I'm going to move this over to here. Now again, I want this to be on the same layer as that, so I'm going to use my match properties, and I'm going to go to that. So now we pretty much have all of the information on the drawing itself that we need for the overall anchor bolt plan. So I'm going to be sure and save this drawing, because I have not done that at this point, which I should have already done that. I'm going to go to my OneDrive. I'm going to go to this course, and I'm going to save this. Again, I want to make sure it's not saved as a DWT. And I'm going to go back to my OneDrive, and I'm going to go to this course, 210, and I want to change this to say DWG, and I'm going to save it as what is required for the assignment. Next, we will go in and start doing our enlarged base plate detail.